Okay. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our speaker of tonight, which is Martin Mervel. So give him an applause already. So, as you all know, Martin is a very accomplished and talented architect who brings over 30 years of diversified design experience in residential and commercial projects. Martin is a building architect committed and focused to integrate nature with built space, who chooses to also work in media of film. Martin has managed award-winning projects, and we all know the Kate Mantilini restaurant in Beverly Hills, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful restaurant, and the Crawford residence in Montecito, working with Tom Main and Morphosis Michael Rodondi. So he got the 2005 Pritzker Award, and Michael Rodondi, obviously, the Roto. Both of these mentors have really, it's not that Marvin got it, but those people got it. But they were mentors, and you see how important, obviously, mentors are. And both of these mentors, again, encouraged him to open up his own office studio, SLAB Inc., in 1987. His talent channels artistic vision as both art director and set designer. Projects include Scream, Michael Jackson's $6 Million video, and Dr. Evil's Lair for Austin Powers, which we all know. International Man of Mystery, obviously based on the architecture of one of his heroes, John Lautner. Another hero, which is very famous, is the Swiss architect Albert Frey, and we know him very well, inspired him to research and brings the master's message of modern architecture to the world. His film team was awarded a Graham Foundation grant for the Albert Frey documentary project, which was called In Search of a Living Architecture. He also associated for a decade with his late and dear friend, photographer Julius Schulman. They began a book collaboration that was inspired by many humanitarian ideas, and I like the term a lot, food and architecture. As a hands-on carpenter, he values the human necessity for making objects and defining space. Our profession demands a high level of collaboration in a competitive market where the economics of delivering on schedule and on budget, that's very important, are necessary to create a new economy of beauty. Design is independent of scale. It is present at all levels in the universe, according to Martin Mervel. And I think he's very right on this one too. So Martin currently resides in Los Angeles, where he enjoys sketching, making ceramic masks, and you saw some there, I mean, you came in, cooking, and on the table, thank you, on the table, cooking, sailing. I didn't know that you're a sailor, Martin, so you have to join me. That's perfect. Traveling, photography, brushing up on humor, I think that's also key, and taking guidance from his 20-year-old son, Ian. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a very, very strong welcome to Martin Mervel.
Thank you, Roger. And thank you, Angel. I wouldn't be standing here without you. Each of us begins with our eyes closed. I come here tonight as an artist, an architect, an art director, set designer, a carpenter, and a ceramic mask maker, a crafter of many materials, to discuss the creative process and its relevance in an increasingly accelerated, business-oriented world. I have pulled together examples from my own creative process over 3 decades, ranging from my academic education in environmental planning at UC Santa Cruz to the world travels that inspired me, from the structures I have envisioned and collaborated on to the imaginary worlds I have helped to design on film in order to demonstrate a simple thesis. Artists and businessmen are motivated by a common cause, governed and inspired by the same creative successes. Art and commerce demand the same spirit, tenacity, and substance of excellence. Tonight, my intent is to outline from experience the process of a recipe for creativity in order to show you that the artist and the banker are united, working from the same bottom line. For me, the juice of the universe is creativity. Could there be any topic more subjective, transcendent, bountiful, loaded, obscure, universal, or magnificent than this topic of creativity? Every individual in this room has it. And if I asked each one of you what it is, you would all have a slightly different variation on this common theme. Creativity fuels advancement. It is the substance we celebrate in personalities like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Buckminster Fuller, and Frank Lloyd Wright. And it is what we do when we invent new strategies in our companies to improve our profit margin or diversify the content of imaginative products. What do these artistic luminaries have in common with the geniuses of commerce? How do we contain and describe the subtle and diverse topic of creativity? A creative education for each person and individual is as diverse as humanity itself. This came about as a result of a conversation I was having one day with one of my people looking at a bulletin board, and I realized that we're all connected. We're all connected like the trees outside. If you look at the boughs of the branch down by the trunk, you can see the commonalities. We all have mentors, we all have family, friends, and influences. And I would urge each one of you sitting here to make your own tree. I've been incredibly fortunate to have the mentors that I have been blessed with having in my life. The impetus for my presentation tonight is this question: what if? What if, because raw, objective creativity in the universe is all about what if? Perhaps, as Joseph Campbell argues, the hero does live with 1,000 faces throughout his life's path in the 5 thematic stories Campbell outlines between man and nature. I humbly share a recipe for creativity, where it comes from and where it might meander off to in my own work, in order to show that creativity is universal. It's energy in artists and business people alike. When we bring true collaborative spirit to the table, unprecedented results abound. What if each of us felt joy and satisfaction, that fulfillment of creation on a daily basis? After practicing design in the fields of architecture and film and art direction for over 30 years, I can tell you in truth that my work does feel like play and that I have turned adversity into opportunity by focusing on art and creativity. This then is the recipe that I want to share with you, and want to outline each of these topics throughout the evening. The what if. I want to actually just show a little tape. Oops. I want to show a little tape. That. We did this earlier, and there it is. Yeah, it is. It was earlier. Here we go.
There you go.
So this is some of the fuel that I've been fortunate to work on over the course of 15 years in architecture, 15 years in architecture. This is a commercial that we art directed locally.
Every gusher's piece is bursting with fruity juice.
It's common knowledge that the backgrounds in most of these
Gusher taste the blast.
Enter a place where conventional thinking disappears, and 123 innovations redefine an SUV. The totally new 2003 Ford Expedition.
So these are done with miniatures that we were superimposing in post.
There's the
on
first
the
ever
product.
powerful third-row
It's almost
seat
10 years
and a
old.
center section that slides forward for almost limitless versatility. There's an independent rear suspension for a smoother ride, and the enhanced stability of Advanced Track. Together, they give Expedition greater driving control. No other full-size SUV can compare. There's class-exclusive protection with the available
So
safety
those are
canopy
superimposed
system
masks
for
that
an
we
extra
put that we
measure of
carved out in the
security.
art department.
Get your free brochure with a DVD or CD-ROM by calling 800-260-0657. That's 800-260-0657. With so many innovations, the Ford Expedition has no equal.
That piece is actually about this big. These are real sets.
Here at Intel, technicians are building something that can help build your business. The Pentium 2 processor.
It's funny, there's recurrent themes in design. I designed that little hook
It gives you
piece
the
and
power
this
to create a
set
rich,
that comes around. If I
interactive
didn't-
storefront
You
on
can
the
fade
web.
them all by, that image was a real piece of scenery. There's a certain timelessness, I think, when you're dealing with geometries that are universal. This is my first commercial.
Pardon the intrusion. Ice draft from Budweiser. It's
We have
ice brew,
two sound
chilled
stations
below
at Raleigh
freezing
Studios,
until
one.
ice crystals form. Then
Over
cold
here
filter.
projected.
Rich, smooth. Remarkably easy to drink. Ice draft.
A lot of this today would have been done in post. That was a rear projection across the parking lot of Raleigh Studios. Those are real scale pieces that we built. One of the art directors that worked with me is in the room tonight. Janet was terrified of this set. She's actually really scared of it. I'll show you later. And the director perseverated over a replacement of all those falling crystal glass. Empty bag. Now, she was fun to work with. These two guys got out of hand. They were not easy. And he was doing a love story. I was sitting right behind him as he was calling Bob Dylan and Mick Jagger about the love story he was doing as a reinterpretation of James Bond. I got to design all the scenery. It was incredible.
Come on, babies, work with me, people. All right, show me love.
It holds up over time. It was the first one. We had $350,000 in that art department. This is Peter Larkin, production designing, one of the most brilliant production designers of Hollywood. And this was one of the biggest flops done, but we had a good time doing the scenery. This is done on the old Desi Lou Studios. That's the computer with a real prop. That's real. This is all real. That was a real built set. And that's partially computer and real. That's the computer. This is real. This is a temple. Another fellow art department brother is here with me tonight. Worked on it with me. This is about this person. This movie was built and shot in London. This is my first movie. I had to assume the role of being Albert Speer. It wasn't easy. Here's the bad guy. Joel Gray actually couldn't remember his lines. It's true. That's a computer based on drawings that I'm going to show you. And this is real scenery in North Hollywood at Warner Brothers Ranch. Working in Hollywood is like another world. Just like you get transported when you're working behind the scenes and you're designing scenery. It's magic. love the pullback here. You're in the real set, and then the camera pulls out, and the computer seamlessly takes you into another world. There's no computer work here. This is all real. But the challenge is delivering 5 to 8 sets a week on an 8-day turnaround. That's a challenge. To draw like a computer.
Daddy's birthday! It's Daddy's birthday!
You suck!
You shot that at CBS Radford.
You suck! Hey, don't leave that open in the house. It's bad luck.
It's bad luck, shop.
The guy in the background was actually our prop master. This is for a pilot. So we do amazing things in Hollywood, and the fuel that filled me with, the juice that filled me with, was absolutely invigorating. I was very, very inspired to work in Hollywood for a long time. We're not so sure where our pathways are going to lead us. Sometimes they lead us to wonderful places, like here in Switzerland, and a friend of mine actually remodeled this home. This was a recycled pig house in the Engadine in Susema. And the idea was, looking at the sketch that I did, seeing the inside and the outside is a metaphor for me in the way I look at problem solving. In the wintertime, these logs serve as snow barriers, and in the summertime, they let the sun in. So having multiple functions of things is fantastic. Nature is my primary source of inspiration. Like many designers, I intend to make a formal connection that soothes each of the 5 senses. We savor our place in the universe when we travel to distant lands. The common and unique adaptations to food, clothing, and shelter globally bring human beings together in a way that led me to create a book, Food and Architecture, with my dear late friend Julius Schulman, who taught me the fine art of humanity. I was following literally in his footsteps without realizing it, because on a hike in Tockwitz recently, I set out to do this sketch, and I realized, you know, that's just like the picture that we used to enjoy together that was on his desk. I spent the last 10 years of his life kind of as a student to him. We just had a tremendous time together. Traveling around the world, I've been very fortunate to see things from different cultures and who work with different materials, and enable me to see the work that I bring back home in new ways. So nature can sometimes get a little bit out of control, and the ability to make a simple thing stand up in a river, I was thinking as a Westerner, I would have designed the building you see, the restaurant on the right, a little bit differently, probably with large pillars and fewer of them. But the locals were explaining to me that as the river rose up and down, the flow of nature would pass through the building. And this is what withstood the test of time. So we don't often, I think, solve things instantly. They take time, and they take memory. And it's necessary to get a very quick, directed start in life in order to not lose our direction, because sometimes we'll go places that we don't expect, like being here in Mesa Verde, designing a television show and exploring different places in New Mexico, and rediscovering the roots that I had actually been able to reconnect with making the masks that I did as a teenager. For me, the expression of drawing came naturally, and I'd like to show you a reel, a selection of my daily sketchbooks that I've been keeping for years, if I can figure this out. Let's see. Here we go. I had this down before, so excuse me. So, just to play the reel. There we go. Let me just play it. Okay. No, that's not it. I had it before. That's not it. No, that's not it. That's not it.
Sorry,
Thank
just
you.
a moment.
There we go. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, this is my assistant, Brittany. Without Brittany, this wouldn't be here. I'm clicking it.
Brittany.
Don't run away so quickly. Yeah, I can.
All right.
Thank you so much. Why isn't this playing?
Why is it playing? Oh,
Okay.
just push play.
Just push play.
It's not playing. Oh.
So it didn't-
Yeah.
That's not it. It's this one, and we played it last time, and it worked fine.
It's fine.
We gotta get this to play.
Oh, yes, yes. Do you want to just go on?
Not really. It's not playing?
I'm just going to close it real quick and then open it back up.
Let me step aside.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that, Martin. Here.
It reminds me of in the old days at SciArc when the carousel of slides would fall out of the tray when you're about to show them. We played perfectly fine this afternoon.
You know what? This is what we're going to do.
We'll just do it like that the next time, too. That's the one. Okay. You want to stick with me? And then, yeah. All right. It actually is worth it, folks, so thank you so much for your patience. All right. So this is a series of selection of sketchbooks that I've been... Yeah, you're welcome to stay up here. This is my computer. It's a double-ended thing. These are the granaries in Hadrian's Villa and Villa Madama. I've been incredibly blessed to have gone to Italy several times. This is Caprarola. This is a town that I lived in when I was with a group of students for 3 summers measuring Hadrian's Villa. And I'd wake up to this every morning and descend into the town, and I had to record it. I mean, it'd be a crime not to draw this stuff. These are some tombs in Rome. Journaling is, I think, a very important, that's Hadrian's Villa. The process and aspect of recording for an artist is individual for all of us. And whether we're artists or not, I am very lucky that I have that gift. These are the town of Ronciglione, Upper Piazza, and San Martino al Cimino. We would go out with our friends and just explore. Lake Nemi, Marianne Burkhalter, a Swiss architect, came down to visit us. We were visiting where Tiberius left some rafts. My favorite, cranes in the marble yards near Villa Adriana. Italy and Switzerland are very dear to my heart. Just the details of looking in a street lamp. I think it's important to record them because you never know when they're going to need to be. This is where we got the gelatos every day in the lower piazza. I just wanted to share this with you in the way that you would discover a book, not a computer. It's a book. Gradual generations are going to forget about what these things are all about. This is in the center of Rome. And in the Forum, I just was dissecting some cross-sections of the great Roman architecture. And of course, one of your Luntsman, Mario Botta. Is Mario Botta Swiss? Yeah, he's one of the best architects in the world. Studied with Lucan and Le Corbusier. I think the only man to have done that. I saw these houses, this house when it was very new in the 80s. And I love doing rubbings. Just a walk in the Ronciglione town vernacular Sunday morning. Roman chair without the stylus, and the Civeteri tombs. All these things are aspects of life that I think we're a little out of touch with on the freeway here. Carlo Scarpa's water clock, and of course in Venezia, the Arsenale, the naval center that made Venice what it was, which was great in its day. I love the paper this paper is, of course, Italian. Here's Philip Keel's doodling on my sketchbook. Philip Keel spoke here last year. Be the change, says the book. No, says Philip Keel. Rubbings of Cambodia. I broke the rules. You weren't supposed to do any rubbings, so I broke the rules and did some rubbings. Tikal in Guatemala. The pyramids in Tikal, they're still mysterious. Cambodia and Tikal share the technology of transportation with canals. This was a Wrighton that was on exhibit at the Fowler, just sort of another thing we're skipping around here. But the Pyramid of the Skulls, most of the pyramids in Tikal are still unexcavated, so our grandkids will get to have the benefit of looking at them. And Temple 5 was spectacular because it rose above a canopy of trees, which most of the white on this paper is just a canopy of trees. I was kind of floating, looking down onto this other pyramid from one pyramid top to another. It was magical. And the fountains. You know, when we travel, we get to see all these, and you never know what you're going to see. So if you carry a sketchbook with you all the time, like a camera, you know, it'll be there. And then, of course, coming back home, always nice to come back home. It's one of my favorite piers in the South Bay. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, so this is the good part. This is Switzerland. This one's Switzerland. this is the one you're supposed to. So this is inside of Hans Niedermeyer's house in Susema. Beautiful. It was a pig house, but Nadine Steinman made it into something special. You know, this was the interior photograph that you saw earlier. And Mouster, UNESCO's world site, and just all the wonders of the joinery and the details. This is the exterior of I'm calling it the pig house. Don't tell Hans I said that. It's a spectacular house in Susema, very, very restful. Schweiner House. It had a little Batman entrance. It was a lot of fun. The interior and the exterior, you know, the Swiss understand architecture in a sacred way because they respect it. Peter Zumthor is doing St. Benedict. Spectacular little chapel. The leaf structure and the section was, I'm just sort of quickly documenting it. Try taking a sketchbook into a bathhouse and drawing. That's not easy to do. And keep the pages dry. Managed to do that somehow. I must have snuck my sketchbook in too. They probably didn't want that to happen. And then just hiking in the hills, in the Swiss Alps. They're not hills. They're big boy mountains. We had a really nice dessert up there. And Regula and Bayet's place in, I think, Suatz. But this was right outside of St. Moritz. And then back in Basel. Patrice, you recognize that? I was just having a coffee in Basel. Recording thoughts is actually, people get annoyed with me, actually. This is Kems Niffers. This is Le Corbusier's building that he did in 1961, the same year that Albert Frey does the gas station. I'm convinced that there's a relationship here, so I took the time to document it carefully. And actually, in a current project, this shows an inside-outside, it's a little glance, of inside-outside of the gatekeepers in the downspout that he celebrated in concrete. And Heidi Weber's pavilion that she gave, she's an American, she gave a wonderful gallery on Lake Zurich, on the banks of Lake Zurich that was really spectacular. In fact, Philip Keel and I got to play Frisbee in front of that. This is Heidi Weber's pavilion. It's great when you can be a benefactor and build bridges like this. And I think I'm showing you this just to sort of condense perspective in a very, very tiny space based on the way we can see things. The Tortuga Fontana that was copied in San Francisco from Rome, and an unlikely pair of images from Laurel Canyon to Italy. I don't know why. But I think that's a good part of just documenting things. We don't always have the answers. I think it's good to ask the questions. I hope there's some baseball fans here. Here's Dodger Stadium. And the precast concrete parasol around the top deck fascinates me, as well as baseball. It's as much of a mental game as a physical game. And then, of course, the process of design is something that is a luxury to document in a book. I resurrected this, and there were some ideas from a light fixture that I was musing on, and some notes that I was taking, and developing ideas over, and the final place for where it could have been a Lear type of tripod structure. Irving Gill's Women's Club in La Jolla was an early precast example of concrete in California. And a friend of ours' house, he's with us here today in Sacatar, California, 2-foot thick straw bale walls in Taylor Van Horn's home. And then as the party leads on, the candles burn out, I was up drawing that for some reason. I think it's important to draw. When you're an architect and you build, you gotta draw stuff. It's just sort of what's necessary to figure out the next item. We were drawing a parasol here in Encino. And this is a friend of ours' backyard. I believe he's also here. Great landscape architect, Chris Akanian. And my son looking like, I don't know what, on a ski trip. And up in Albuquerque. And back in New Mexico and Albuquerque in the Sandia Mountains looking down. Just exploring historical landmarks is, I think, a way to record them with the sketchbook is a nice process. It's a process that is non-linear. And this could be in Paris or New York, but it happens to be in downtown Los Angeles in a railroad spur. And I'm just finally, this is my son's IU football game, and some unlikely collaged images of lovers and electrical antenna. Don't ask me what that's about. And then just celebrating Albert Frey's spirit and memory in the yacht club that got resurrected and rebuilt because of the strength of one woman who was able to fund it and get it built. And it's actually sitting there in Mecca right now. I encourage all of you to go out, to go out and see the yacht club that Albert built and that Julius photographed. And I think what you're going to do. Okay. Thank you. So it was intentional that I showed that to you in a way that was like that. So it was just different than, I could have just showed you slides of it, but I didn't want to do that. And because of all the love in the room and the support that I have, I'm able to carry on with my collaged images. A great designer said, "Design must seduce, shape, and perhaps more importantly, evoke emotional response." That was Coco Chanel. It's really important to recognize our limitations. I've got emotions here from Native Americans that are schematically shown around a circle based on the cardinal points. And the figure ground on the right is of a mountain that we were looking down from the top of, that I was drawing from my hotel room. Wings are part of the work that I do because I believe in the human spirit and human aspirations. So abstractly, I'm going to share with you the literalness of this wing, but in the work it gets a little bit more abstracted. And in school, I was just whimsically drawing my own projects and put them on the supermarket shelf. So you'll see some student projects here on the supermarket shelf for consumers, thinking about marketing. Really important to put your own hand stamp literally on your work, and making connections in life is something that is, again, we don't know why we come into each other's lives. We don't know why Johnny just mentioned the music is so important, but it subliminally sits there. But the connections that we make are fleeting, and it's important to maintain them. It's important for us to understand each other from a communication point of view and to listen to each other. And for me, looking at the patterns in nature on the right side of the ginkgo leaves is essential. I just share one quick memory of being in Paris on a very cold winter day, and in the Place de la Concorde there was a ginkgo tree that had just shed its leaves the night before. So it was as if somebody had just placed a pot of gold around this tree in the glistening morning cold Parisian morning. That was not what. And the idea of working in Southern California has taken me to have all kinds of clients. In this case, some boy's treehouse was actually threatened by a politically correct design review board. And I just thought that was inhumane. So we responded to an article in the LA Times, and within a week or so, the mother of these two boys came to the studio, and we redesigned their treehouse, because I just thought, you can't, that is just not possible that they would not permit these 12-year-old kids to not have their treehouse designed. So I have been known to design treehouses as an architect. And also dog houses. We did the pup tent in the true spirit of Southern California, giving fire hydrants and surfboards and all the necessary things that were able to take shape in Southern California. And the importance of the two languages between set designing and architecture is seen here. That my dual career path, as the end product of architecture and set design are in sharp contrast, simultaneously being born of a common and visual language. The end product of set design is two-dimensional, in sharp contrast to the spatial architecture, which relies on both the maker and the user's experience. Safe to assume both rely on all aspects of integrated arts from cellular scale to one as immense as the universe. For this reason, I believe nature is the governing force in design. She knows no scale. She can be linear and nonlinear, both with fury and with calm. Similarly, architecture, when it is mature, has this contrast of space, scale, form, texture, material, and delight. So we're looking at the working drawings of Kate Mantilini when we were drawing them at Morphosis quite a long time ago. There's a language that we architects like to occupy, that we describe our objects with, and then we rip buildings apart and create new objects that respond to the social concepts. Tom was just an unbelievable teacher for me and gave me the keys to the kingdom by letting me be the project architect leading 5 very, very talented people, and I got to see this through. This project occupied 2 years of my life. And the minute ago when I was talking about connections, because of my relationship with the owners of the project of Kate Mantilini, I was asked to actually do the remodel. So last year, these are my office's drawings that we put into the computer, and the sample of John Worley's marvelous Marvin Hagler was done on a piece of masonry, because originally when we were looking at the mural, we were considering it being a roll-up piece because we didn't know how long the building was going to be there. We didn't know how long our lease was going to be. And he was doing the tonemic paint base as if it was a fresco. And that's ultimately what we ended up creating it on. It's very important to have teams of people working together. This is one of the years that I got to spend, one of the 3 years in Italy with Robert and Marianne, Robert Mangurian and Marianne Ray in Ronciglione, where I was showing you some. So being injected into Hollywood was like, I don't know, getting a jolt as a shot in the arm, taking drugs, I guess. I've never done it, but it was amazing going out of the interview to get this job. In was walking one of my fellow Morphosis mates who actually designed the library across the street from the PDC, Steve Johnson. I got the job, and this changed my life forever. And when Jose Montano asked me to do the design, this is my my very first commercial, I guess after I did the movie. And the inspiration for it was when the gal who's doing the, in 2001 A Space Odyssey, she's walking in the 360, she's wearing a bonnet, she's wearing a hat. And that hat is very much responsible for the inspiration of this particular set. If I didn't tell you that, you'd never know it. So we have these, that's the importance of juxtaposing, I think, collaging ideas together for me. And I was also looking at Casa Batlló and the, just a series of curves. I didn't know what art departments were when I was an architect. I was a very proud architect. All of a sudden there was no work to be a proud architect with. So because this thing was designed in about a week or maybe 2, we ran out of work. I worked my way out of a job, and I was asking what's called the art department coordinator. I learned very quickly who all these people were. The art department coordinator said, well, call Ernst van de Bovenkamp at Design Centers. And I became a carpenter like that, because one of my boyhood friends from shop class in 1969, 67. And I knew how to operate a hammer and, you know, some nails. I don't consider myself a carpenter by building code standards, but I can bang sets together because they're made out of 1x3s and pieces of Luan. This would probably be built in the computer today, but I got to actually construct my own sets 2 weeks after designing them as a sketch. That was amazing. The example of looking at nature is something that is important for me. I'm looking at things in all different ways and looking at the connections more than the scale. So if we take electron microscope micrographs of little animals, they have a relationship to large-scale projects like this double house that was commissioned by an East Coast developer underneath the Hollywood sign. You can see the before and after images that we had, and the site and the preoccupation of axes, of different axes on the house that was on the upper house on the left-hand side. Mystery is very important in how we present ideas, emotion of experience, and how a project is communicated in a series of presentation boards is important. And anthropomorphism is something that in the masks, this was actually an autobiographical mask from when I was in high school. I was utilizing that on the left-hand side in the cross-section of the building, and also on the right-hand side of the tower piece. You could see facial expressions in these pieces, and the plan on the left is showing a interest in the application of different axes that I learned from studying Hadrian's Villa. So there was a kind of a re-entrenchment of ideas that we take you on a picture postcard tour of, looking at different viewpoints of the building. Dual purpose of architectural parts is something that I learned from Tom at Morphosis. When I worked on the Crawford House, we were actually taking air through the structural tubing. And in this particular building, on the left-hand side, you can see, I didn't get a laser. I want you to see what I'm seeing, but it's kind of important. So these things are structurally holding up that little chunk of what I call as a ship's hull, part of the ship. But they're also delivering water to that as a planter, so dual purpose. And kind of like things having multiple purposes is very efficient in architecture. Repurposing things is also as buildings. Albert Frey used to say that it's important for buildings to have new lives and for them to change. And here, this is the old produce distribution center in Los Angeles. That's now, of course, the Southern California Institute of Architecture, exporting all kinds of international ideas around the world in architecture. The slide on the right is a very important bit of my personal viewpoint. The biggest challenge I have, I think, is just taking my energy and relaxing. So letting go is something that is, for me personally, maybe for some of you, a difficult thing to do. I was in Oaxaca, and I snapped this picture looking up at the sky, and it just reminds me of the stillness of solving an issue, of starting from stillness is something that actually is a very important aspect of problem solving in design. Working in college, I was fortunate to build a solar shower, and when I burned my hand at 120 degrees, I realized the power of the sun. Got to build a solar car wash years later in the valley. Taking metaphors of ideas and working them through. This, in this case, was a Vietnam War Memorial entry appropriating a Rolodex and stenciling the 57,000 names on stainless steel so that you would actually hear the wind whistle through these veins of a gigantic Ferris wheel and have a new understanding of the fallen dead. Making things is absolutely essential. I'm just going to go through this really important. So the symmetry, asymmetry, radial, and modularity in examples of the apple in nature, Villa Rotunda, the ancient city of Beijing for symmetry, and the amoeba, Notre Dame du Haut, Le Corbusier, and Belfort. And then if you all take your hands and just do this, just do that for me. Just take your hands and put them together. And if you actually were to describe that shape of the intersection of your hands, you would notice that you'd be tracing the entire plan, the entire city plan of Venice, Italy, which many of you have been to. So there's a connection that actually defies scale. And then the radial one is seen in Haeckel's idea of a diatom, a Greek amphitheater, and Palmarova's ideal city 500 years ago is an example of symmetry. And the modular idea of black and white, I choose to think of as chocolate and vanilla checkerboard and honey seeds, tatami mat, and Egyptian cities that get excavated. I took the time to do that because it's important to apply concepts in the work that we do, that we organize our buildings in the cities that we might draw, in the projects that we might design, in the playgrounds that we might share stories in with our fellow playmates. You know, our advantage as human beings is that we have a longer childhood than any other animal on the planet. For imagination and exploration, this is evidenced by our longer childhood. We'll push our limits to build taller building block towers. We push our limits to expand our creative capacity. I was pushing a limit and making an anemometer here spin from recycled salad bowls. And I called it the parasol of love because it would spin when the wind was, you know, hardly moving at all. It was almost still. So I'd say as long as there's love in the air, you know, we'll call this the parasol of love. And again, rather than showing you some finished, you know, beautiful pictures of the thing, I'm very inspired by the process of building. I think it teaches us a lot of things. I'm also inspired by the idea that my father taught me about keeping it simple, silly, the KISS theory that nature, I think, applies. When Weston's camera captures the image on the left of some sedimentary formation, it's a moment in time that the camera could have, the camera takes. And so the simplicity of just the wind caressing the process of that place for, you know, a long period of time is something that we can't experience, but the simplicity of nature tends to balance things out. The ebb and flow of the tides tends to balance things out. It's a lesson, I think, that we can take and apply to our architecture. The simplicity, in this case, was taken to a two-car garage that only had a single footprint of a single car. So instead of going horizontally, we're lifting the car vertically. I was actually doing these sketches and faxing them back to my associate here in Los Angeles while I was working in New Mexico. It took us 2 years to get this zero setback line approval, and we could have built this in 2 or 3 months, but that's the beauty of the planning department in Los Angeles. The fantasy and reality. We have fantasy on stage, we have reality on the right side to work with. And the necessity to sell a project is something that's very important. This was a spec house that we were doing. And the evolution process of how this spec house occurs, I was interested in pursuing a different language of weather and looking at various viewpoints of how the building would be built. Business and design process are united in creativity. The January issue of National Geographic magazine, the current one, a couple of months ago, states that human beings are genetically predisposed to exploration and discovery. That there is a physical gene pushing me toward new innovative solutions sure takes a load of anxiety off my shoulders. I submit that when I begin the steps necessary to analyze what it takes to make architecture, I look at program, function, structure, mechanical, lighting skin, the expression of mood with a material palette that will support the client program. The same happens on the stage to show and tell a storyline with a set design. This is not a science, and a mechanical response in design will fail in architecture, or if art directed without passion, inspired by human emotion and a gut response. And so too in business, where the developer desires to acquire a new parcel, the creative process of analysis begins. The universal advice stands. Pay attention to the details in acquisition, development, entitlements, local and regional comparables. The impossible task of reading into the future cannot be calculated without a factor of risk. My father used to talk about calculated risk in his profession as a local stockbroker. The artist makes choices that can counter logic where the predictable is altered. Nothing is an exact science due to unknowns. The constant evolution of change pervades our lives, and we get to utilize this veil as nature's uniform of certainty. Our intuition and gut will enable us, with experience, to use our observations and make decisions in new areas to advance toward success. This is evolution, and the pace of technology inspires and empowers our struggle to survive. Some other ideas, some other images of how to sell this project. And so moving into Hollywood now, the speed of architecture is a love of drawing and then building, and then building the teamwork to get the vision done. Their contribution to it is a thrill. The trick is to get the people into a team that can contribute like a synchronized rocket. This happened literally on the Michael and Janet set Scream. We delivered on 3 concurrent stages in Universal Studios in 1995. That people are so committed they will build and collaborate a solution in an egoless environment is absolutely a thrill. I have a unique way of doing that because of the vocabulary that I possess as an architect. The irony is that the technique and the knowledge as an architect is irrelevant in Hollywood. It doesn't matter because the subliminal training is there. I can solve problems quicker because it's there. It comes partially from building sets myself as a builder. Building since I was a kid is natural. Clear communication is critical of ideas of the storyline. Each of these media have their own individual issues. Scheduling is critical. In TV work, the weekly scripts are reliant on the writers. More pressure for time when the story isn't delivered quickly. So it's important to see. I wanted to show you the concept here in this sketch was Michael actually dancing on the ceiling, which was taken from Fred Astaire's dancing in Royal Wedding. So you wouldn't necessarily make that connection, but that's what we were going for. And the business I was talking about, Janet being terrified of the set, you can see on the right side, the scale of that was a 17-foot diameter rotating gimbal. And everything was bolted down, including the furniture and the cameras, the lighting, everything had to be completely bolted down, but it took them some time. I remember one day the choreographers were sparring in an argument between how Michael was dancing and Janet was dancing, and the two choreographers were very theatrical. So there was no paint used on these sets. It was all Formica. It was actually I never knew the final accounting for it, $5 to $6 million. It was absolutely a thrill. So this was certainly a project of passion. Every single person, I remember assembling the art department from students that Jay and I were teaching, my teaching partner's actually in the audience with us, from school, and the producer came past the art department one day and said, you guys are working so hard, there's like steam coming out of the room. When we first started this project, Mark Romanek, the producer, had 3 notebooks, just like Marilyn Lewis had 3 notebooks of recipes when we were doing Kate's, when I presented one of the table projects in her bedroom on Linden Drive a few blocks away from here. But she had done her homework, and Mark had done his homework. And the homework had paid off in the way that we, the art directors and the set designers, were doing our designing. It just, like I would say to Tom Foden, the production designer, it just designed itself. We actually, and everybody's got a budget, we had to cut one of our sets that was supposed to be a Calatrava-inspired lunar landing module set. That was actually cut from the budget because we didn't have the money to do it. So every single project, no matter, even if it was $5 or $6 million, which I'm ashamed to tell you that we spent on 4 or 5 minutes of video, that is actually a crime of humanity. It should have been spent on treating starving people on the streets of any of our big cities in our country, but we got to do this video. This was the artist rendering of the same set where we rented every flying V guitar in the country. And actually one of our carpenters chopped his thumb off. We had to rush him to the hospital in UCLA, and we got it put back on. It was fine. It was a happy ending. But you're working under such stress and time that people lose their wits about them. And this would have probably been done on a computer today. So the open-mindedness is part of my recipe for creativity. And when I made this mask when I was 15 years old, I think today is Thor's Day, and Thor was one of the head gods in the Moses, Zeus, and Apollo tradition. I was making masks of many archetypes of power that I didn't actually realize when I was a kid. And these things evolved. The masks on the left and the upper right were taken from a keen interest in Edward Curtis's photographs. The Native Americans were documented by an American Army man, photographer named Edward Curtis. And I discovered those. I was very interested in, as a kid, just the textures. And I spent many hours at Beverly Hills High School in the ceramics studio making these things. Then when I was on the TV show a few years ago, 4 years ago in New Mexico, I reconnected and made the masks out of porcelain, and with natural twigs, just impressed them into the masks, into the clay. The hero with multiple faces is the product of one unified consciousness that is human. Another thing that's human that links all of us is water. Last year, a competition called Drylands led me to assemble a group of architects, and we were taking the idea of the network of the LA freeways and repurpose them as canals. Eric Garcetti told me recently that the position of the network of many of the regional freeways in Los Angeles is based on the position of where the Gabrielino and the Chumash Indians actually used to fish and swim, which makes sense, actually, topographically, when you look at the maps. Our idea was to go back to the Romans and look at the cisterns that the Romans stored water in and recycle that idea for saving water. Sometimes travel is not just a physical exploration, but also we tend to travel in time. And we can recognize human differences as a position that requires trust, which actually transcends time, I believe. The same trust when we are building a child's confidence. Each of us are students and teachers in life. An architect knows that if he builds with care, his structure may stand for centuries. A teacher knows that if he builds with love and truth, what he builds will last forever. I'm a warrior doing battle against peer pressure, negativity, fear, conformity, prejudice, ignorance, and apathy. But I have great allies: intelligence, curiosity, community support, individuality, creativity, faith, love, and laughter all rush to my banner with indomitable support. Without judgment, every individual in this room has had both positive and negative energy flow experiences. When we feel a sudden intense rush of energy, or when we make a contribution brainstorming with professional colleagues, or meet that special someone who elevates our endorphin production level, our spirit can rise unexpectedly. You know what it is. Call it love. This nourishes our life force and propels us forward into discovery and wonder. And in times, we get to create and make, as when I got to do that from the groups of kids that came through the office from the Children's Museum. My late friend Julia Schulman once impatiently expressed the prosaic creative forces on the site of the incomplete project, The Boathouse, with impunity. I've been coming to record architects and their babies for some time now, and I never set foot on one that is not ready for me. That morning, I was proudly taking Julius on a brief tour to see one of my babies. I wanted to show it off. I wanted to show the master the work that I was making here, but he didn't have time to waste looking at the work that was not camera ready. His mind was a steel trap, recalling the treasure trove of master architects and their projects like a computer stores data. My intent here is to share a glimpse into demonstrating a process that delivers product. I sincerely want to share the special process of making a thoughtful work, no matter what the scale. I believe design is a divine gift that we are given. Its process is as precious today as when our world was created, and our responsibility is to give ourselves over to that spirit, to learn and create while we are here in order to improve the world. This is the boathouse, and I wanted to say that the orange vase that's right there is intended to be a chip of the earth. My client actually loved her gardening, so I'm just going to appropriate this as a prop. But you can imagine this is a copper vase that's set in the ground. So I wanted her to be able to lift it from the ground and then take it and just place it directly on the table without without having to place any without having to do any clippings. It was a part of the enlivening of the architecture. So it was just a live, natural idea. And this is the boathouse in its reality. We had a very narrow lot, 40-foot wide lot. Wanted to remind us that the beam that's coming out on the alley side was intentionally, my intent was to cut it off. When I did the drawings, I thought I was going to cut it off. And the builder, who's actually here with us tonight, Ron Kologi, suggested to put a light in there. He said, what if I could put a light on the end of that? And I'm thinking in my head, a chandelier wouldn't look so good at the end of that beam. He wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking that he was intending a chandelier to go there. He said, what if I could put a light inside the end of that beam and just leave it the way it is, Martin? So I thought I had a solution, but I was actually open to new possibilities of listening to my builder. So listening is really important, and I know sometimes I'm not good at it, so it's a necessary thing, and looking at things in new ways. Because we had such a narrow lot, I thought vaporizing the corners and the windows was very, very critical to look out, and also bending space with that curved model was something that you could achieve great structuring of perception and feeling inside a space, whether it's curved or it's angled or it's flat, by realigning the ceiling, which is what we did. And the quality of the workmanship is nothing short of spectacular. One of my classmates actually built this, a gentleman named Paul Burnsweig. I've been very fortunate to just over the years build with teams of people. This stair was conceived of from our backs. The vertebrates in our spine was what inspired me to do. This is the second stair done. And I mentioned wings earlier. Wings are, I think, part of just from the obvious function of providing shade. They make something look as if it could fly away, that the human spirit could fly away. The wing here in this case was used as a piece of advertising for a lifeguard station for a competition that I curated or put together. And this light and space was done by walking down the street, actually with my father down in Santa Monica. The owner of the Gallery of Functional Art invited me to participate in a competition in an exhibit. And I jokingly said to Lois, well, if it's crowded, do you have any space on the ceiling? I didn't know what I was talking about. But I ended up designing this as if it could have been put on the ceiling or the wall. And it was a combination of the animal and the machine, where the warmth of the animal is seen against the chill of the machine. This is an animal sack. And the pinball house was designed with more interests of Hadrian's Villa. You could see the axes in Hadrian's Villa that are expressed in the model. And those pink things in the middle are the collection of the pinball arcades that my client had. To be an architect, you have to be an artist and a scientist. You have to measure and you have to have taste. Who wants you to create their space for them if you do not have a good eye? You enhance it and create it and make it happen. Modern and classic and timeless is the goal of the day. So we arrive at Saarinen's TWA tower on the left, which many people think is actually an object of a bird. It does look like a bird. But Saarinen's intent as the architect was just intending to make a building that would show the line of flight. By the time that he completes this in 1962, the building's obsolete. I don't know what Hadrian thought when he completed Castle Sant'Angelo. That was his tomb. But Rome is an eternal city, and I'm just sharing that time and space travel and mental memory can span space. My involvement with morphosis, this is a picture that my mother took of me in Laguna Beach when we had actually filled the museum in Laguna. And I didn't know when I was holding that barrel vault in my hand of the Flores house that it would actually be used to build a building that I designed years later with Tom in the Crawford House. Tom called me up one day and said, we need to have a model in Tokyo in 2 weeks. Can you do it? I said, I'd love to. This is my teacher. I said, I'd love to, but all my friends who've worked for you never received any money. And I have a family to support. So the next day, Michael Rotundi, my other teacher, called me up and said, Martin, Tom really wants this model in Tokyo in 2 weeks at the Global Architecture Gallery for Wayne Fuji. Can you do it? I said, I'd love to, Michael. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll do it for $250, but I have to ask you a favor. What's that? I have to ask you to sign a document. And, you know, he's my teacher. I have a high regard for my teachers. I was embarrassed to ask him. And he said, okay, I'll sign it on one condition. What's that? Don't tell Tom. So I told both of them that at school at last year's graduation, and neither of them could remember the story. So this brings us to the universality of nature. Testing questions of everything with all 5 senses. I've seen this building. It is a testament to why Tiberius had 12 villas on the Isle of Capri. And seen from the inside or the outside, it was commissioned by a writer in the 30s named Malaparte, who took full credit for it. You know, architects don't count. It's the owners who write the check who, you know, design these buildings, folks. Now, Libero is one of the greatest architects out of the fascist era of World War II's Italian period. And he designs this abstracted just piece of perfection that engages our senses with its simplicity. And so it sort of embodies all 6 ideas that I had expressed in the recipe for creativity. The first project I did when I left the office was encircling the site just like the Crawford House did. So just kind of paying attention to my teachers and building that in Laurel Canyon. Took some cues. The first stair I did for paying homage to Albert was this stair that I called the Frey stair. And the Firelight project, I mentioned that it was based on natures with the vertebrate sections. Firelight was a kind of a universal timepiece. Time is a preoccupation of mine, and I was just, there's the maquette on the left and the real thing on the right, which one of my students helped build in the drywall portion of it. Oh, this is a good one. The finished thing, one day the same guy who did the stylus at Kate Manalini, Paul, calls me and says, Martin, I got to throw this thing away. I messed up. You got to come down to the shop. So I go down, and he was ready to throw it away. He was ready to throw away like a week's worth of work or whatever it was. I said, no, 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 it's okay, Paul. We can use it. And so that's why you see the different colors of the piece on the left there that has sort of darkened feet on it, because we just added those. It wasn't a design thing. So sometimes there's Dave inscribing the units of time with the whimsy of the shop drawings that I gave him to build from. We take pieces of nature and we look at them from different points of view. This is a seed pod table. Whether it's a computer or it's a hand drawing, I'm always interested in carving out new points of view and new ways of looking at things. Sometimes we make an homage to our predecessors. Jean Prouvé is one of the greatest. He wasn't an architect. He was the son of a man who had a metal shop. But I thought some of the work that he did was so great. I didn't copy it, but I abstracted and appropriated and give him full credit for the concepts that I was recycling. The recycling of nature here and the whale tail in the tripods that are anthropomorphic, and we're getting to the end of our talk rather quickly. And I just beg your patience for 1 second, Roger. My teacher actually designed the Annenberg Sunnylands, which is just spectacular, that I suggest that you go there sometime and take a repose and pause, and remember to take a look at sunsets when they happen next. Can the pursuit of art and business be fueled by an identical energy called creativity? This is an issue that I struggle with on a daily basis. Is this creativity motivated by ego or universal divinity? Bottom line profit motivated by greed would be fueled by ego. But what of a selfless expression to solve community homelessness? I have a client that is motivated by wiping out the reality of people living without a roof over their heads. The man who donated this building is sitting in the audience with us tonight. A nonprofit named Chrysalis in Santa Monica, headed by a visionary CEO, Adlai Wertman, and I, took the approach that the interior space is an extension of the all too familiar street. Our clients then were treated as the owners of the space, and we set out to address their needs, the homeless. What if our calling was divinity itself? We were motivated by the failure of human beings to organize their qualification to survive. We asked, what is the impact of space to raise self-esteem and create human transformation? Our results create over 90% successful employment for our homeless clients. I'm very proud of that fact. And these are some photographs that Julius took himself. I utilized Albert Frey's idea about painting the ceiling light blue. Worked out well. And looking at art by Brad Durham is something that inspires me. Whether we're working on projects from computers to pencils. This was a movie called The Isle of Lesbos. It was a family movie, as long as you leave your children at home. And this is the infamous sets of Austin Powers, which we see the director, the fembots, the director is tearing his hair out. And sometimes we'll actually make props. We'll make props instead of shopping for props. And we'll design sets that are occupying a vocabulary of modern. Sometimes we'll pretend that we're Albert Speer.
Martin, I have to interrupt you now quickly because, we Swiss, we get up very early in the morning.
Give me 2 more minutes.
But let's do it that way. I want to give you the award, and then everybody who wants to stay around, they will be able to ask you questions. But I want to give him the award before we all leave. Okay?
Well,
so
I just want to show a video.
Okay, show a short video. Okay.
So I want to just show a short video. So let me ask Brittany to come up.
Okay.
Where's
Okay.
Is Brittany here? Oh, here's Brittany. Okay, yeah, well, we were going to look at these, but I have to say one thing. This is not about watches in Swiss, even though you guys are the guardians of culture. We have a very special relationship to computers. And studies have shown that people would rather have wind-up watches that are inaccurate as opposed to the Harry Winston Opus watch on the lower right because they want to interact with their computers. So anyway, so this is Albert. We were going to look at some sketches that his father had done and acknowledge him as the modern transplant. But we're going to look, this is some work that we have done recently that there's a gentleman in the audience that might recognize this. So this is a project that we're breaking ground on this week. We actually have pulled the permit for this. This is the Solar Wave House, and I want to show you a little video of it. Can you push? This is just a little walkthrough, and just give me 2 more minutes. Okay. So this is a little walkthrough of this project. This will be a 2,400 square foot home. Mexico? Echo Park. 3 blocks from my studio. I can walk to this site. Yeah. You all can come over and take a look at this. So we look through there, and then one last thing that you're going to actually flip over, Roger. This is actually a gift for you that I'm actually looking for investors for. Good. This one's paid for, but here, this is. So after we get, so this is the wingbrella, which I actually am looking for investors for, which we can make shade or energy after paying attention to butterflies and plants. Take a look at what this thing can do. This could actually be adapted for any place in suburbia. And it can generate energy. Imagine if you put solar fabric on top of this wingbrella. You could generate energy from it. This is, we've thought it all through. This is the kit of parts. So there's shade or there's energy, and then, okay, so how does this, and then this, wait, no, just go back, just play that. Okay, this is the last video right here, folks. This one you won't believe. This is the showstopper. This is for, I did this for Roger. Roger needed to see this. Right here, take a look. Can you see that? Look at that. You could have that in your backyard.
That's good.
You could have that in your backyard. All of you could have that in your backyard. All we have to do is find somebody who likes it, and there it is, the butterfly. So just to wrap up, so this is, so we're gonna get you all out of here. I promise. We're gonna get you all out of here. This was being inspired from a boat ride into Geneva. You recognize that? Yeah. Okay, so that was actually for home back in Santa Monica. So we didn't do that in Geneva. We did that. We were thinking about doing that in Santa Monica, but this one, you can recognize this one with the traffic of the 405, and there's the Mormon temple, and then Malibu. You can see Mom. There's Malibu in the background right there. My mother lives in Malibu, and this only had this was conceived of to be engineered by William LeMessurier, the great engineer in Boston. I don't think he's living anymore. There were going to be 50 elevators in this. This was going to be a global landmark. This is the transcultural door that was the link between the Orient and the Occident, in the East and the West, with an observation deck on top of it. 50 elevators, each having interactive elevator cabs describing each of the 50 states of the Union. And I turn it over to Roger now. I don't want an award. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
All righty. I would say Martin did a wonderful job, and I think his presentation was very special. And so we also decided to do something special for Martin before we all go home now.
The Swiss do everything right.
We try. But I can't open it. We give you also a... Linda, you should open these things.
Is everybody thinking about how they're going to do their tree of creativity?
Yes. So it's...
You
should open this. Okay. All right. So wait with the band, wait with the music. So, Linda, you should take this open for me. Okay. We have a little diamond. Actually, we call this a Swiss crystal for you, Martin. And this is obviously in honor from the Swiss American chapter to you.
Thank you.
And also the same nice proclamation for you, which I hope you put into a very good place. Again, it's also from the Sheriff's Department. So, which is also, so for all the good work you do, okay? Okay. Thank you. This is good. This is good. Okay. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for coming, and I want to make sure that you drive very safely home. As I always say, the police is out there, so they have to make their budgets. And we have April 18th event. Angel, what's? Yeah, it's whatever. We send you out invitations for this, but I did one mistake tonight. I forgot to introduce to you Miriam and Vicky, and so please give them just for the end and for the whole evening a great applause. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming. The band is going to play further. If you want to listen more to some good music, please stay. I wish you a very happy Passover, and I wish you obviously a very happy Easter. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.